with regards to this long question in order to wrap up the human digestive system and nutrition. And I asked you guys to do it for homework, and I said that I'll give you guys the answer. So let's just read through the question again. It said, describe the digestion, absorption, and assimilation of food that contains only carbohydrates. And there's a note there which says no marks will be awarded for answers in the form of flowcharts or diagrams. Therefore, flowcharts and diagrams are not allowed. Okay. And here is the answer to that question. So mechanical breakdown of carbohydrates, which starts carbohydrates broken down into smaller sizes by teeth, and stomach, which grinds the food to become a liquid called chyme. So you can also say it, which turns the food to become a liquid called chyme. And the maximum that you can get for the mechanical breakdown is 3 marks. Then for explaining chemical digestion of carbohydrates, you need to say carbohydrates in the saliva, pancreatic juices, and intestinal juice breaks down the polysaccharides to disaccharides and eventually to monosaccharides in an alkaline medium. And the maximum number of marks that you get there is 6. Okay, and then when we look at absorption of carbohydrates, so it says glucose, monosaccharides rather, move by diffusion through the columnar epithelial cells into blood capillaries of the villus. The capillaries all join to form the hepatic portal system. And the maximum marks that you can get for the section of explaining absorption of carbohydrates is 4 marks. Okay, and then when we look at assimilation, it says it takes the digested food to the liver and the muscles where it can be stored as glycogen, and from there to the rest of the body through the hepatic portal vein to the cells to produce energy through cellular respiration or synthesize other polysaccharides for growth or repair. And then the maximum marks that you can get for explaining assimilation is 4. And then remember, guys, the other 3 marks, which are for synthesis, is whether your essay is in a logical manner, right? And if it's comprehensible, and if you only put facts that are related to carbohydrates or rather to the question. So I hope you guys got all the marks for your essay. So I'll just give you guys a minute or 2 just to copy down and mark your answers, right? So remember, these are answers from Friday's long question, okay? All right, so I'll just move on. I hope everyone is okay and everyone has the answers. If you need more time, just please indicate for me. Otherwise, I am moving on to today's lesson. All right, cool. Let us move into today's lesson. So today we'll be looking at energy transformation to sustain life. And we'll be looking at the process called cellular respiration. Okay, so now, guys, don't confuse cellular respiration with gaseous exchange. Okay, so there is a difference between gaseous exchange and cellular respiration. Right? Cellular respiration does not have anything to do with breathing. Okay, So remember gaseous exchange, that's where we talk about your inspiration and expiration, you're breathing in and breathing out. But here in cellular respiration, we'll be looking at how we use oxygen, right, to break down glucose in order to get energy from that. Okay. Now, at the end of this lesson and other various lessons that we will be having, you should be able to, number one, explain why organisms need energy. You should be able to explain what energy is. You should be able to write a word equation for aerobic cellular respiration. And you should also be able to explain glycolysis, the Krebs cycle, and oxidative phosphorylation. And you should also be able to write down the chemical equation for cellular respiration. Okay, so guys, I'm going to need you guys to be very active and also indicate to me if I should move on or if I should take it slow or if I should repeat a concept, okay? Because there is a lot of words involved here and diagrams and stuff. So just in order that no one gets confused and that we all move together. Okay, awesome. Sorry. Now let us start with the introduction. In plants, food is made in the form of glucose by the process of photosynthesis. If you guys can just recall a few weeks back, we looked at photosynthesis. And remember we said that in order for photosynthesis to take place, we need water, which we find in the soil, right? Your plant
Come on, the mouth touch with expected. I'm going to touch it.
Okay, sorry about that, guys. As I was saying, I was explaining the process of photosynthesis, all right? And I said that, guys, remember that we need carbon dioxide, right, which we get from the atmosphere, and we need radiant energy, which is from the sun, and we also need water that we get from the soil. And the products of photosynthesis is glucose and oxygen. Okay, so now when consumers feed on these plants, the starch is digested into its simplest form, which is called glucose. So now the glucose is then taken into the cells where it is broken down to release energy. This energy is released during the process of cellular respiration. So guys, remember, cellular respiration is concerned with how we derive energy from the food we eat, particularly glucose, right? So it's about deriving energy. And now the energy that is released is in the form of a compound called ATP, that is adenosine triphosphate. We also looked at adenosine triphosphate when we were dealing with photosynthesis. Okay. Now, cellular respiration is the process during which glucose is broken down to release energy in the form of ATP. And then oxygen is usually required for cellular respiration, though it may not always be a requirement. And hence, cellular respiration is divided into two, where we have aerobic respiration that is in the presence of oxygen, and anaerobic respiration, which is in the absence of oxygen. Then the byproducts of a cellular respiration is water, carbon dioxide, and ATP, right? So remember, guys, if you have any questions, if you need me to slow down, just indicate for me in the group chat, or by using these yes, no, go slower, go faster icons there by participants, right? Okay, now let us look at the uses of energy. So energy is required in the body for 5 main purposes, and these purposes are growth, movement, cell division, maintaining body temperature, and active transport. Okay, so now a question that you guys should be asking right now is, what is energy? How is energy defined, right? And energy, it is the ability to do work. Okay, so now remember, guys, energy in the body, or rather the body uses energy in the form of ATP. Remember, energy can take up different forms. You know, it can be heat energy, it can be nuclear energy, but the body only uses a type of energy which we call ATP. And hence, when energy comes in the form of food or glucose, it needs to be broken down in order for it to be ATP, because ATP, that is the currency that the body uses. Okay. Right, now let us look at growth. So energy is used to make large molecules such as smaller polysaccharides, enzymes, proteins, fats, and glycogen. Okay, some of these molecules are then used to make cell components. These cell components are then used to make materials needed for growth, right? And then we said another reason why we need energy is movement. So movement is brought about by the contraction and relaxation of muscles. And energy is required in order for your muscles to contract or for your muscles to relax. And remember, we said that this energy in the body is in the form of ATP. Okay, so now examples of movement in the human body is contraction and relaxations of the heart muscles, the muscles of blood vessels, or even peristalsis that we looked at during the digestive system. Okay, the other use of energy is cell division. Okay, energy is required during cell division for DNA replication and movement of chromosomes. Okay, if you guys can just remember, I think in grade 10, yes, last year, we did mitosis. That was a form of cell division. Okay, and then the fourth reason that our body uses energy for is maintaining the body temperature. So now heat energy that is released during chemical reactions is used by endothermic organisms to maintain the body temperature. Right, and then the fifth reason, it is for active transport. This is where substances are absorbed against the concentration gradient. Therefore, energy is required. Remember, we also dealt with active transport and diffusion when we were looking at absorption that happens in the villus. Right, cool. Now let us look at energy as ATP. Okay. So what happens here, remember that the body requires a very specific type of energy in order to be able to use it in its various life processes that we have looked at. Okay, so now the body requires a type of currency in order to do the work. Remember, we said that energy is what? The ability to do work. Okay, so now energy that is released during cellular respiration is used in the following way. Most of the energy is given off as heat. Some of the energy is used to make the compound ATP. ATP is an energy-rich compound and it stands for adenosine triphosphate. We'll look at the structure in the coming slides. The formation and the breakdown of ATP is referred to as the ATP-ADP cycle. And the reason why why it is called the ATP ADP cycle is because ATP, it has two phosphates. So the first one, the ATP, is adenosine triphosphate diphosphate. All right, so the di stands for 2. Okay, now during the ATP and ADP cycle, adenosine triphosphate is formed from adenosine diphosphate. So that's basically just what I had just explained now. Okay, so now here is the structure. This is the structure, 3 phosphate groups. And we have an adenine, which is a nitrogenous base, which is attached to your ribose sugar, which is in turn attached to your phosphate groups here. And we have 1, 2, 3 phosphate groups. And then when we look at ADP, we also have the nitrogenous base, which is adenine, 2 phosphate groups. Okay, so that's the difference between ATP and ADP. Awesome. Okay, so now the energy that is released during cellular respiration is used to combine phosphate molecule to, or when the energy release a phosphate molecule from to form ATP, or kilojoules of energy, right, is released when ATP becomes ADP. Can you guys predict how much energy is released when ATP becomes ADP? Just use the group chat there for us. How much energy is released when ATP becomes ADP? Okay, so if you said 34 kilojoules, then you are on the right track. So these ATP molecules move freely, therefore they are able to move to any part of the cell and supply the energy for any process that might need it. And then all cells use the ATP to store energy and as a source of energy. Okay, so remember that ATP is the energy carrier in the cells. Okay, that's the form of energy that our body uses. Our cells use, our tissues and organs. They use energy in the form of ATP. Okay. Now let us look at the process of cellular respiration. So cellular respiration occurs in both plant and animal cells. Okay, in cells of all living organisms, cellular respiration takes place. And there are 2 types of cellular respiration. The first respiration, and the second one is called anaerobic respiration. So aerobic respiration has to do with the presence of oxygen. And the second one, anaerobic respiration, has to do with the absence of oxygen. Okay. So this is basically what I have just mentioned. Okay, now let us look at aerobic respiration. So aerobic respiration, right? This is a site of cellular respiration. And it occurs in the cytoplasm of the cell and in 2 places of the cell, which is the cytoplasm and the mitochondrion. So at the bottom here, if you guys can just follow with me, this is the chemical equation of aerobic respiration. It uses glucose, oxygen, and then your products, the products that form are water, carbon dioxide, and ATP. Notebooks, the chemical formula for glucose, we said it is C6H12 and O6. If you guys just remember from photosynthesis, the chemical formula for glucose, it is 6 carbons. Twelve hydrogen is very important to note, the chemical formula for glucose. So now let us look at the structure of the protein. So it's important to also make sure that, so this is a cigar-shaped organelle found in both the plant and animal cell. It is surrounded by a double membrane. The outer membrane is permeable to allow oxygen and pyruvic acid to enter. The inner membrane is folded to form finger-like projections. The projections are called cristae. These cristae increase the surface area for the process of cellular respiration. Okay. Then within the membrane lies a ground substance called the matrix. Found in the matrix, we have our DNA, ribosomes, and enzymes. The ribosomes manufacture the enzymes that are required for respiration, and the enzymes help with the process of respiration. Remember the definition of what enzymes are, okay? So the enzymes are biochemical catalysts, okay, to speed up reactions, okay? So now here is a picture of the mitochondrion. So here we have these small dots there. Those are your free ribosomes in the mitochondrial matrix. And there we have the mitochondrial DNA. Here we have the inner membrane and the crystal, and the matrix, okay? And here we have our outer membrane and the inner membrane space, okay? Okay, so now within the membrane where we have I think this slide is, the number of mitochondria present is an indication of mitochondria present in order for cellular respiration to take place so that much more energy can be provided, okay? So an example of this is by the villus, right? We dealt with the villus just last week, and we said that the villus also has mitochondria around the epithelial cells. So the epithelial cells, those were to assist with the absorption of through the villus, through diffusion or active transport. So all cells which have active transport will have mitochondria produced. Okay, I hope everyone follows. If you don't follow, just please indicate for me. And if there is anything that I need to explain, just also indicate for me in the group chat or by using these icons at participants. Right. So now, how is the mitochondria adapted in order for the process of cellular respiration to take place? And is that we have smooth out around the cell. We have the outer membrane, which is permeable to allow oxygen and pyruvic acid to enter the mitochondrion for the Krebs cycle and oxidative phosphorylation. The third reason is the inner membrane is folded to form the cristae of respiration. The fourth reason is that DNA and ribosomes are present for the manufacturing of enzymes that are required for respiration, okay? Now let us look at the process of aerobic respiration, oxygen, and there are 3 phases. That is very important to note, the 3 phases. The first one is glycolysis. The second is the Krebs cycle or the citric acid cycle. And the third one is oxidative phosphorylation. So you guys should know that in terms of aerobic respiration, we have 3 phases or 3 stages. Firstly, glycolysis. Secondly, Krebs cycle. Thirdly, oxidative phosphorylation. Okay. Right, now let us look at the first stage, which is glycolysis. So glycolysis glycolysis is that we need to break down glucose, all right, in order to form energy. But in order for us to break down this particular glucose, we need energy. So if you guys, I think you guys know of this saying that you need money to make money. So now let us view ATP as money. So in order to make ATP through glycolysis, we need an investment of 2 ATP molecules, all right, like ATP, because we already invested in. Okay. So now again in glycolysis, it involves phosphorylation, which is the addition of phosphate to glucose with the addition of energy. Okay. Okay, so glycolysis, it starts with an energy-rich 6-carbon molecule, and that molecule is called glucose. Remember, guys, I said you should be able to know the formula of glucose. It is 6 carbons, 12 hydrogens, and 6 oxygens. So it is C6, H12, and O6. Okay. So glycolysis starts with the energy-rich 6 broken down stepwise to form 2 3-carbon molecules. And these 3 carbon molecules are called pyruvic acid. And during the process, energized hydrogen atoms and energy is released. Okay, so this is basically a diagrammatic explanation of glycolysis. So glycolysis happens in the cytoplasm. And at this stage of glycolysis, oxygen is not yet required because it's not taking place in the mitochondria. Okay, just note that. So here we have our 6-carbon molecule, which is glucose, all right? And then we have intermediates which form from glucose. Let me just get glycerides, which form from here to this 6-phosphate, fructose 1.6 biphosphate, and dihydroxyacetone phosphate, which is DHAP. Okay, so and in order to move from glucose to G3P, we need ATP. All right, so ATP is required for these steps to move from 1 to 2. And then from 2, what we have here is that we have intermediates, right, which form from G3P to pyruvate. Pyruvate is our end product of glycolysis. Your 2 pyruvates, our end product. Have the use of NAD+, and it gives us NADH, okay? And then this NADH, it is moved to the mitochondrial matrix for electron transport system, okay? And then at this point here, this is where we have your ATPs, which are being released, okay? So we have the first ATP, which is being released. And then at this particular point here, we also have another ATP is 2 ATP and 2 NADH. Okay, so NADH is a cofactor which assists in electron transfer, right? So that is basically the biochemical redox reactions that take place in the cell. Okay, so just in short, the summary of glycolysis, it occurs in the cytoplasm are 3 carbon molecules, which is called pyruvic acid or pyruvic Okay, you can use the terms interchangeably. And then we have two process. So that should be your takeaway, your take-home message for glycolysis. Okay. Then the energy that is released is used to form ATP. We have already mentioned that. Each step of the reaction is catalyzed by the enzyme, but we don't need to go into greater detail at this level. All right. Then we have the Krebs cycle, which is the second stage. Remember, we said that aerobic respiration is divided into 3 stages, which is your glycolysis. The second stage is the Krebs cycle, and the third stage is oxidative phosphorylation. Okay. So now the Krebs cycle, this stage is dependent on oxygen. Okay, now let us look at what happens in the Krebs cycle. So guys, remember, I think some textbook call the Krebs cycle the citric acid cycle. So don't be confused. We are talking about the same cycle. Krebs cycle and citric acid cycle is the same thing. Okay. So the two pyruvic acids enter the mitochondrion. Two pyruvic acids or pyruvate, right? So the pyruvic acid is now used in a cyclic series of reactions. During these reactions, energized hydrogen atoms and carbon dioxide are released. The hydrogen atoms are transferred by coenzymes. Okay, so remember we looked at earlier on. All right, so this is the flow diagram for the Krebs cycle. So we have our pyruvic acid and it is turned into acetyl-CoA. So in this process here, where pyruvic acid is turned to acetyl-CoA, we have the release of carbon dioxide and 2 hydrogen molecules. And then your acetyl-CoA turns into citric acid cycle, which is a 6C molecule. And then we also have the release of carbon dioxide again from citric acid to your 5C compound. And we also have a release of 2 hydrogen atoms. Then your 5C compound goes to your 4C compound, and we have the release of carbon dioxide and 2 H's, which is your hydrogen, and it turns to the next compound there, which is also a 4C compound, and we have the release of 2 hydrogen atoms, and so on and so forth. So this is just basically a series of cyclic reactions. Okay, so now in short, the summary for Krebs cycle, what you should know about the Krebs cycle is that it requires oxygen. Okay, it's a series of reactions that break down pyruvic acid to carbon dioxide and energy-rich hydrogen atoms. Okay, so now the purpose of the Krebs cycle is getting the release of carbon dioxide and getting your energy-rich hydrogen atoms. As you guys can see from the structure here, we have the first release of your energy-rich hydrogen atoms happens there. It happens there as well. It happens here, and it happens here. Okay. So that is basically the summary of the Krebs cycle. Okay, now let us look at the third stage, which is oxidative phosphorylation. So this phase also occurs in the mitochondrion. The energized H atoms that were produced during glycolysis and Krebs cycles are involved in a series of reactions. So now these H atoms, these hydrogen atoms, are transferred from one coenzyme to another. And at each transfer, the energized hydrogen atoms give off a little energy. This continues until all the energy is released from the hydrogen atoms. Okay. So the energy that is lost by the hydrogen atoms are used to combine ADP plus P to form ATP. Okay, remember we said ADP is adenosine diphosphate, so it only has 2 phosphate molecules, and then we use energy that is lost by the hydrogen atoms is used to combine a phosphate to the ADP, okay, to form ATP, which is the energy carrier of the cell. So the H atom then combines with oxygen to form water, right? Okay, so now let us look at a few questions. Question 1, the energy-rich compound associated with respiration is called A, ATP, B, ADP, C, P, or D, none of the above. Can you please use the group chat to send through your answers? The energy-rich compound associated with respiration is A, ATP, B, ADP, C, P, or D, none of the above. Send through your answers, guys. And if there is anything that you want me to explain again, just also please indicate for me in the group chat. Anything yet? I send through your answers, guys, so that I can see that we understood. Thank you, Bali. Thank you, Rapilo. Thank you, Ntombi. Ken Ntombi, do you have a question? All right, cool. Just saw your hand was up. Right. Okay, so the answer is A, which is ATP. All right. Cool. Let us look at the second question. The process that requires energy in the body are A, the processes that require transport and cell division. B, mitosis, meiosis, and passive transport. C, growth, mitosis, and meiosis, or D, both A and C. So your options again, A, growth, passive transport, and cell division. B, mitosis, meiosis, and passive transport. C, growth, mitosis, and meiosis, or D, both A and C. Send through your answers, guys. Okay, Ntombientu, your video is on. I think, not sure if you can see that, but your video is on. You could kindly just switch it off. All right, so most of you are saying both A and C, and I guess that is D. Requires light energy because substances are moving according to their concentration gradient. Okay, it's not, substances are not moving against their concentration gradient. So therefore, in diffusion, or what we call passive transport, energy is not required. Okay, therefore, A is out of the picture. Option A is out of the picture because of passive transport, but yes, cell division does require energy. Form of cell division, meiosis cell division, but passive transport does not require energy. Therefore, B is also out of the picture. Then we look at option C, growth that requires energy because that is form of cell division. So that is correct. D is incorrect because we have already ruled out A. Okay, so the answer to this question is C, growth, mitosis, and meiosis. Do we all understand? To all those who say both A and C, do you guys understand why the answer is not D? Awesome. Okay. Cool. Right. And I think we have a last question. All right. Question 3. The organelle in which cellular respiration occurs is A, chloroplast, B, nucleus, C, mitochondrion, or D, Golgi apparatus. The organelle in which cellular respiration, B, nucleus, C, mitochondrion, or D, Golgi apparatus. Beautiful. Mitochondrion. Right. Let's see if we have more questions. Okay, we have anaerobic respiration, but time is not on our side. So we will start with anaerobic respiration tomorrow. Okay, so guys, just to quickly recap and give you guys a summary, okay, of what we dealt with today. So guys, we looked at glycolysis, right? And we said that glycolysis occurs in the cytoplasm outside the mitochondria. Glucose is broken down into 3 carbon molecules known as pyruvic acid or pyruvate. And then we have 2 ATP molecules which are produced during the process of glycolysis. Okay, and then we have the second phase, right, of aerobic respiration, which is called the Krebs cycle. We said that it requires oxygen. And then we have a series of reactions that break down pyruvic acid to carbon dioxide and energy-rich hydrogen atoms, okay? And we also said that it takes place in the matrix of the mitochondria. And then we looked at oxidative phosphorylation, okay? We said that this occurs in the mitochondria, and then energized hydrogen atoms are transferred, and that at each transfer, energy is given off, and this energy is used to form ATP from ADP. And finally, the hydrogen combines with oxygen to form water. Okay, so guys, another important thing to note is that glycolysis, we have 2 ATPs which are formed. In the Krebs cycle, and the oxidative phosphorylation, we have 36 ATP molecules which are formed. So in totality, aerobic respiration gives us 38 ATP molecules. But guys, we will look deeper into detail with regards to the amounts of ATPs which are formed in the later lessons. And tomorrow we'll also look at anaerobic respiration. Okay, so guys, thank you very much for joining in today's session. Please study the work that we have covered in this lesson in your textbooks, study it in greater detail, and also look through anaerobic respiration as we'll be dealing with it tomorrow. And if you guys have any questions, you guys can send me an email at onkarabetse.setso@gmail.com, and also please follow Africa Teen Geeks on all these social media platforms. Please remember to also tell your friends that we do have school and we have life science at 1 o'clock and that they should register for the daily news. And goodbye.